I'm a sick person. I mean, honestly, there's something wrong with me. So we haven't talked about it yet on this channel, but in January we're moving to another location. Something much better suited to what we do. I'll be closer to civilization. I'll be surrounded by car people instead of mattress people. It doesn't really do me much good when I'm working by myself and I need an extra set of hands, but I'll be surrounded by car people. And I won't be on the main road, so it'll be easy to shoot video and I don't have traffic going by all the time. It's just a tough place to work out of. So at any rate, because of that, for the last like 2 months, there goes another one. For the last 2 months, I've been like trying to declutter. I'm getting rid of stuff. I'm giving it away. I need the freedom, you know what I mean? The less clutter, a lot more than I need money at this point. So I'm just, get this shit out of here, get it out of here, right? But in spite of that, I'm compulsive. So I just picked up another Harley a couple of weeks ago, and then over the weekend I buy this thing because I need another XJ, like I need a hole in the head, right? But this pops up on Facebook Marketplace. And needing a motor. The guy was asking $1,000 for it. So I went and I looked at it. Needs a motor, and I was like, it's a 99. And I'm like, okay, you know, maybe it's a good parts vehicle. I'll just pick this up for parts. So I ended up getting it for $750, which I think is a great deal, even if it has a completely smoked motor. And we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that, but not in this video. So I looked it over. This thing is really straight. It's really clean. And then I climbed underneath it. And it's pristine under there. There isn't a speck of rust anywhere under this truck. So I says, you know what? Okay, we're going to add it to the fleet. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. But yeah, this is my way of decluttering. I buy motorcycles and Jeeps. More on this as we go forward. But yeah, I got problems. I also have problems that my friends are always calling me out. Why do they do that? So last night I turn on the TV and look, I see Dr. Art, and Dr. Art is calling me out.
Quick video today, guys, on the Kart of Death. Check it out. 3 car batteries, 1 helicopter starter engine, big fat tires. Check it out. And this is your call out, Mr. Uncle Tony, with your little tiny mini bike that you think is so fast. Well, this is my chance for redemption with this electric cart. You pick the time, you pick the place. The hell, we could do it right in front of the house if you want. Let me know when you're up to it. See you later.
All right, fine. So the electric death cart, this drag cart with 36 volts, 1800 amps all at once. All right, we're gonna race, fine. Dr. Art, do you remember? I'm sure you remember this thing right here, my little 200 in the 100 frame. I'm sure you remember this because it tried to kill you twice. Literally threw him right off the back twice. So yeah, man, I'm up for it. Let's call it 300 feet. Let's do this right in front of your house. How's that sound? So 300 feet. I don't know, man. We're gonna have to come up with a bet to make this thing interesting. But I'm ready to go. Anytime you are. I just got to pull the ripcord and smoke you. Well, I don't know, because 1500 amps, 1800 amps, and 36 volts on that thing. That ought to be pretty severe coming off the starting line there. So, all right, but yeah, let's do this, man. 300 feet, and we'll race next week. All right. So, what else is going on? Right. Yeah. See, this is how I declutter. This is how I declutter. Keep getting rid of stuff. All right, so slag hammer. Okay, the light is really screwed up here. So let's talk about slag hammer, because we ran it on Friday night and we're back to where it ran an 823. Its best run had been 812, so we're within a tenth of, so in other words, basically we're back where we started, because a tenth between days, you know, different tracks, different days is nothing. So as far as I'm concerned, we're back where we started. Now we can go forward from there. So now I can start tuning it, but I've had a couple of changes of heart. So as I explained initially, this engine, we put this together for Power Tour. Now, we did the whole build on this engine last year, budget big block. And it's essentially a stock 383. So it's 10 over, with stock pistons. It's got stock cranks, stock rods. The cylinder heads are the small valve 5/16s. So it's got the 1.6 exhaust valves. I don't even remember what cam I stuck in here. Go watch those videos and I'll tell you what cam is in there. But it's like a 520 lift hydraulic cam. Stock rockers, stock push rods. It's got fresh valve springs in it. What else? And that's it. And it's got the tunnel ram with a pair of 600s on it, and a stock dual point distributor, like a Mallory dual point distributor. So initially, the idea was to put this thing out on Power Tour. It covered us a couple of thousand miles, and then we were going to put a stroker in here. So I've got everything back at the house. I've got literally everything I need to build a 451. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So that was the plan. Run Power Tour with this, and then put the 451 in it. All right, so one thing leads to another. And you know what? I've become fond of this engine. I thought of it as, okay, well, after Power Tour, we'll pull it out and we'll just keep it around as a spare in case we need something, an engine that runs, or, maybe we stick it in a car for abuse, like burnouts or something like that. But honestly, I've become fond of this little thing. It is a happy motor overall, and it's been abused pretty severely. So you know what? I've had a change of heart. And you have to allow yourself to make changes in your life as you go along. I'm not going to put the 451 in here, at least not now. I'm going to keep working with this 383 because honestly, I think that once I get everything sorted on this car, I get the suspension right, I get the tune-up right, I honestly believe that this engine is going to see the 760s, 750s, 8th mile. And I'm not trying to go ridiculously fast with this. Ultimately, it's going to be like a bracket car, something to take the nostalgia meets and gasser things and so on and so forth. So the idea here isn't to rotate the earth. I mean, the car is just wrong in every way a car could be wrong. As far as going fast goes, the aerodynamics in this thing are actually tragic. It's the only word that describes the aerodynamics is tragic. And I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to change anything about it because I love this car. This car makes me smile when I walk up on it. Even like the other night, walking across the pitch, walking up on the thing, it just made me smile because it's so old school. And when I say old school, you have to understand something about this car. With the exception of this aluminum radiator, which I despise, but I'm going to put an old school radiator. With the exception of this radiator, there isn't a single component or thing on this car that's newer than, let's say, 1970, 71. So it's all completely period. Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about it. You know what I mean? Because this is the way they used to build them back in the day. A lot of people are like, oh, you need to narrow the rear end on that thing. You need to... Narrowing rear ends didn't become a thing until, let's say, with lower end cars, right? Not pro stockers or anything like that. But the narrowing rears didn't become a thing until the middle to early 70s. If you were talking about a car that was built, let's say, in 67, 68, 69, like that, they wouldn't have narrowed any rears. They ran them just like this. So the car is not going to change. I love the way this car looks. I love its stance. I love its attitude. I literally love every single thing about this car. And I've come to love this engine. Talk about building on a budget, right? From the oil pan to the velocity stacks, from the water pump to the flex plate. Like literally everything here I have less than $1,500 into. Right? So the fact that it just runs and makes noise all by itself, to me, that's an accomplishment. And this is fun. This is where the fun is. And the fun really, when you're talking about a car like this, the fun is finding those small ET improvements and chipping away at things and working stuff through. And I could see enough things that were wrong with it after this Saturday night. When I say wrong, I mean that need to be refined. I saw enough things Saturday night that I know it's got the potential to run deep down into the sevens, and so that's what we're going to do with this. So let me tell you what I found, because I know you're going to find this interesting. The air Saturday night was spectacular. It was just, everything was just, it was like ideal. And the track was good, everything was good. And I didn't want to change anything from the last time the car was out. I just wanted to make sure that we had found the problem. and just put a couple of runs on the car, because you have to put runs on a car to know what it wants, to know how it feels, to know where it wants to be shifted, to know how it's supposed to sound. So repetitive, taking the car out and just making laps and not making big changes is an important part of getting a car dialed in. So we went Saturday night, made the first run, and after the first run, I pulled 2 plugs. I pulled a plug from each side of the engine, from the middle of the engine, just to get an idea what. Okay, that's every time I move the nose is going back and forth. That's that clicking noise you hear. So I pulled a plug from each side of the middle of the engine, and I was like, okay, it looks a tad lean, but not scary lean, and that makes sense because the air was so beautiful, right? And that's as far as I went with it. So we made our second run, and I was like, okay, I know what I want to try. Let's go home and go to the next step with it. So I got it back here Saturday morning, got it off the trailer, pulled it in, and I says, well, let's get a real look at the plugs. Let's see what the distribution is. So just as I expected, when I pulled the plugs out, the middle of the engine and the back of the engine, okay, so the back of the engine looked just a tad darker than the middle. The middle looked lean, but not scary lean. But the front 2 cylinders, and especially the number 1 cylinder, the one closest to me right now, was black. Like black, right? Carbon. Like, okay, so now this explains why as the car would get to the top of the gear, it would start to taper off and you'd hear a pop out of it. Because the number 1 cylinder is running super, super fat. So under load, it'll fire good, but as the load diminishes, it becomes so fat that it just doesn't want to fire. And that's why you'll get that fall off of power and you'll get that pop out of it. So what's going on here? Now I know the carburetors, there's nothing crazy with them. The car idles fine, it doesn't load up the plugs, there's no black smoke, there's no rich smell. I mean, it's literally, you could just take this thing and drive it anywhere and it would probably get decent gas mileage. What's going on here? So the first thing that I thought of was it might be pulling fuel through the accelerator pump, because that's common. And there are 2 gaskets there. There's the gasket that the booster goes to on the body of the carburetor, and then there's the gasket. It's like I'll explain it to you. It's like a crush gasket that goes in the screw that holds the booster to the body. So I said, maybe it's leaking there. So I started the engine and I put the camera down in the down the carburetor and revved it. Nothing, bone dry. So I know that's not it. Could the float bolt be too high? So I checked the float bolt adjustment and the float bolt was right. Like, where is these front cylinders getting so much, where is number 1 getting so much fuel from? So the next step is, let's take the carburetors apart and see what we find. So I pop the bowl off the front and I look and everything looks perfectly normal. And I take the meter and block off the carburetor and everything, the gasket looks right, everything looks fine. I see absolutely nothing unusual. And I said, what jets did I put in here? Because I didn't remember what jets I had put in here. And then I realized, okay, I remember I had 78s because I had the jet assortment. I had 3 78s. I didn't have any more 70. I needed 4. I had 3 78s. I didn't have any 79s, but I had an 80. I had a couple of 80s. So I put the 80 in the front, the front corner of the left corner of the front carburetor closest to number 1. Now that slight difference between a 78 and 80 could absolutely never account for how fat the front plug was. So then I looked at the jet. So here's the jet that I took out of it. This is the one that I put in. This is the one that's been in the car really all along. So this is the 80. But when I look at the hole, whoops. Okay, I just dropped it and it's gone. But when I looked in the hole, I said, no, that's not an 80, that's huge. So I broke out the numbered drill bits, and it's the equivalent of a 96. At some point in that jet's life, somebody, somewhere along the line, drilled it from an 80 to a 96. And then not checking it, not looking at it, just taken for granted by looking at the number, oh, it's an 80, I stick it in there. I had been feeding this front corner of the motor from a 96 jet when it really wanted something like a 78 or the 80. So that explains why the front of the motor was so fat, and that explains why it would start to lay down as the load diminished. So All right, little at a time, little at a time, little at a time. Now I was going to make a change. I've got a set of 486s for this car that I was going to just swap the center section. It has 430s in it right now. And I was going to just swap the center because they're ready to go. Really, the car wants 513s or thereabouts, but it's a heavy car. It's 3250 without me. So ballpark 3250. So you throw 200 pounds for me, fully dressed, and now you're talking about 3,450 pounds. It's not a flyweight car by any stretch of the imagination. And like I said, it has the aerodynamics of like, you know, it's terrible aerodynamics. It's just a brick. So you can only expect so much from this thing. 513s I think is what it needs, but 486s is what I have to pop in. But I think what I want to do is I want to go one more time. I want to play with tire pressure. I want to get the tire pressure down a little bit, because I did spin the tires through the first lap. I'm not sure if it spun it at all on the second one, which was a little bit slower. So basically that's telling me that it needs more gear. So, but before I give it more gear, I want to actually mess with the jetting and get the distribution exactly right. And then we'll go to the next step. So I've already booked my dog sitter for not this weekend, but the following weekend. So we're going to go out that Friday night and just mess with the jetting on it and tire pressure and see if we can't get to 7 like that. And then over the winter, we'll figure out exactly what we got to do to this car to get it down into that 760, 750 range, where I know it'll go, but it's just going to take some love. As far as the stroker goes, yeah, I'll build it because I already got the parts. They're sitting around literally collecting dust and cobwebs. So I'll build it. I'm not really sure what I want to do with it yet. I may put it together as a propane engine for the Belvedere, which is the other thing. I've been working on this little at a time. I'm really going to get back to it hardcore this week. And you know, one of my goals is to drive this thing to the new shop. So, but anyway, perhaps the stroker will end up in there with a pair of throttle bodies. I don't know. We'll see. But I've definitely changed. I have a change of heart with this. I've grown fond of this engine, and I just like everything about the package. So I think we're going to just keep this together as a 383 and work at it. The only main change I may make over the winter to the engine itself is I may go to the larger exhaust valves, because this has the tiny 1.6s. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. So that's it. That's the update from everything that's going on here. And, oh, I know there's stuff I'm leaving out, but as soon as I click this off, I'll remember what it is. But that's it for now. I'll see you tomorrow.